Oh my God, Anita.
Hello, I am Willy Bragg. Welcome to another edition of the Willy Bragg Show. I hope you all are doing well. And reason I want to discuss what we're discussing today is, why are these people considered right wing? Because it baffles me. I am baffled. I mean, it's one thing. It's one thing to be in very, very hard left-wing circles, to have an ideological circle jerk like this, and to sit there and to be accusing each other of this sort of thing. But when you're trying to work together to try to bring positive change, it doesn't help anybody. It doesn't help anybody to sit there and try to destroy the reputations of other people. And it's really frustrating. It really is. It's drama. It's counterproductive, and it keeps the right winning. And it's a circular firing squad. Oh, you're not radical enough. Now you're working with the right wing. You're a grifter. I mean, it's stupid. It's stupid. And honestly, I mean, there is a right wing. There are two right wings. There's the Republicans, that's a given, and there's the corporate Democrats. That's your enemy. They're your enemy. The Republicans, that gives you Marjorie Taylor Greene and Lauren Boebert and Donald Trump and George W. Bush and Dick Cheney. I mean, they're all. I mean, even though that Liz Cheney and Donald Trump are like, I mean, even though they're at each other. I mean, remember, Liz Cheney voted with Donald Trump 93% of the time. Never ever forget that. And for a lot of people on the shit-lib left, and even some actual leftists to sit there and act like, oh well, Liz Cheney, it's okay now. And then You go and shit on people on the actual real left. Come on now, really, Anyway, yes. So I'm gonna start with the very first person, and the very first person because she is the one that they're going after right now at the moment. She's the one they are giving the hatchet job to, ideologically speaking, right now at the moment, and that is of course Briahna Joy Gray. As you know, Briahna Joy Gray worked with Current Affairs in the past. She is a contributing editor. She was also in the past of the 2020 Bernie Sanders National Press Secretary. And she was also in the past a senior political editor at The Intercept. So, and now she currently hosts Bad Faith on YouTube, and she's now being called right wing, because, well, I mean, I think it goes back to the time when she was Bernie Sanders' national press secretary, in my opinion. Basically, urging him not to drop out so quickly, and that was my position. It's like, Bernie, don't drop out. I mean, that was my position too. I mean, of course, he doesn't know who the hell I am. I'm Briahna Joy Gray, but my position too was don't drop out, fight to the very end. But he dropped the knee quickly, and he didn't want to go and upset the sensibility of his good friend Joe Biden. I mean, anyway, and basically, she voted. I know she voted for Jill Stein in 2016, and she voted for Howie Hawkins in 2020. She does not like Joe Biden at all. I mean, she is very, very hostily anti-Joe Biden, and I guess that gets you to be right wing. If you voted third party, you're obviously pro-Trump if you vote third party, even though the candidate you vote for is to the left of the Democratic Party. Because, I mean, honestly, Hillary Clinton was very, very conservative. She and her husband Reaganized the Democratic Party, and they expect us to vote for right-wing slop in 2016. And then they expected us to vote for right-wing slop again in 2020. And then I called this the final nail on the Bernie movement. The force to vote issue. I know that Bernie Sanders was not exactly a proponent of force to vote, but force to vote was in the tradition of Bernie Sanders. And the fact that the squad and the fact that many shit lives within BreadTube, where they were virtually divided in half, the cowardly half, I would refer to them, not willing to do it, and those in Congress, in the House, that were too cowardly to go to do this, because it was the optics of force to vote. It looks too militant, like a militant parliamentary action. It looked rude, and didn't want to go and upset the Democratic establishment by trying to hold Nancy Pelosi's seats hostage, and we wouldn't want to go and have her seat, taken away so early on in the Biden administration, would we? Yeah, I wouldn't mind. If she's not going to go and do anything for us in terms of healthcare, yes, she should have had her seat taken away. I say the Democrats, corporate Democrats, and they're both parties fucking suck, but the corporate Democrats are our enemy, and the squad should look at them as our enemy. Honestly, I think that this strategy, if you're going to go and work with the Democratic Party, you should go there with the intention of serving one term, doing as much damage to both parties as possible to try to get your agenda across, and then get the hell out. I think that if you're going to do that, do it in that way. But honestly, you got to work outside the two-party system. The two-party system is the reason why we do not have national health care, and I'm realizing that all along. But I'm not going to go and talk about Medicare for all throughout the video, although you will hear me talk more about force to vote. regarding the FBI raid with Donald Trump. And basically, they try to make her out like she's like pro Donald Trump when she's obviously not pro Donald Trump. I mean, because she was talking, I mean, honestly, as an African-American woman, she can empathize the situation of how the FBI went after Martin Luther King, went after, Malcolm X, went after Fred Hampton. I mean, and countless others, lesser known leftists, black leftists and white leftists for that matter. I mean, so the FBI are not really our friends. I have always proposed to abolish the FBI. I mean, it's been an agency. They have actually, with the COINTEL program, the counterintelligence program in the 1950s, they went in there and infiltrated left-wing groups all throughout America in the 1950s and 60s. And you want to know why we have several hundred different organizations today, while we have an alphabet soup of leftists? And you want to know why? Sometimes there's some flaky, fucked up people within the left that admittedly, COINTELPRO, FBI, and we can't get shit done because of it. So Briahna Joy Gray was absolutely 100% right to use this opportunity with Donald Trump situation to address the issues about how the FBI fucked the left in the past. Just because Joe Biden and just because the Democrats are in charge right now does not mean that the FBI are your friends. Even if the FBI is a little more politically correct now, doesn't mean that they're your friends. They are not. And the fact that Marjorie Taylor Greene decided to go and use one of her tweets from Briahna Joy Gray does not mean that Briahna Joy Gray is in league or in sympathy of Marjorie Taylor Greene. And it is absolutely mean-spirited. And I mean, and here's the thing. Briahna Joy Gray is a strong, able, intelligent woman, and she can handle herself. And I don't want to make her sound like a victim saying this, but I just noticed that there's a lot of, just a lot of, and I hate to use these terms, a lot of privileged white males in particular going after Briahna Joy Gray, going after a black woman to attack a black woman. Really? Is that what it's come down to? But you don't want to hurt Hillary Clinton's feelings. I get it. I totally get it. Don't want to hurt Kirsten Sinema's feelings. Don't want to hurt any Nancy Pelosi's feelings. But Briahna Joy Gray, go after that target. I get it. I see what I see how everything is adding up. And then they go and try to take her comments about the great replacement theory regarding Tucker Carlson out of context. She is no fan of Tucker Carlson. She wasn't trying to sit there and say, well, gee, Tucker Carlson is not such a bad guy. She's not trying to get a spot on Tucker Carlson tonight or anything like that. And she was trying to talk about context in history. And while the Democratic Party has abandoned the working class altogether, not just the white working class, but working class altogether, by embracing identity politics and weaponizing it, and everybody gets screwed over as a result, because the Republican Party obviously is not going to help the workers in this country. And so anyway, and she was talking about that in historical context. So, and then seeing that disgrace from last week of Cenk Uygur, a week and a half ago now, Cenk Uygur going after Briahna Joy Gray. How in the hell she was a strong woman to put up with that shenanigans. And when he went and turned his back on force to vote, that was horrible. That made me lose a lot of respect for him. And then the whole thing with the Aaron Mente and the Jimmy Dore and all that shit from last summer also pissed me off. But this was a low right here. What happened on TYT's conversation when he went and just viciously attacked her the way he did last week. And I'm like really pissed with Cenk Uygur over that. I really am. So I'm just beside myself with that shit. So I mean, it's just absolutely just stupid. How these supposed to be our allies. Someone like Cenk Uygur is supposed to be our ally, and one time he was somebody I respected a great deal, but really no longer. No longer. He went down the he went down the toilet with Rachel Maddow. So sad, very sad. So let's talk about our next person here, Jimmy Dore. We all know who he is. Stand-up comedian, host of the Jimmy Dore Show, a very important part of TYT, and in some ways represents the true Young Turks more than the Young Turks itself today. I would say that he and Kyle Kulinski both, even though they're at odds with each other, still represent the Young Turks more than anybody else. But, because he does have kind of a personality that is abrasive, and that I think that was part of it for many years. The fact that he clashed with Sam Cedar a time or two, as a fact that Anna Kasparian last summer decided to have a Me Too moment regarding an episode that happened back in 2015 or 2016 with regard to the nice new skirt statement that was taken out of context, and it was a forgotten situation, and then she claimed sexual harassment as if she was somebody who was an insubordinate when she was actually over him in authority. So I just had a tough time trying to really believe her in that regard. But I'm going to also say that one of the reasons that they really hate Jimmy Dore right now is over his correct position of forced to vote. And honestly, that's really what it came down to. So if you support forcing the Democrats to try to give you something in return, like healthcare, you're right wing. That's how they're doing. As if not doing anything and having Democrats behave like a soft Mitch McConnell is actually more progressive than Jimmy Dore's militant action of forced to vote. It was not really Jimmy Dore's militant action. It was a DSA thing. It was something that proposed by DSA, and they were correct to propose this years ago. So this whole thing with the him and his association with the gray zone, and I don't agree with the gray zone on everything. I don't agree with the Young Turks on everything. I mean, we're talking about the two subsections of the online left. I mean, right there. I mean, and again, but here's the thing. The gray zone is more correct than incorrect, and the Young Turks have been very wrong on a lot of shit too. So this whole episode last summer with Cenk Uygur, Anna Kasparian, Aaron Mente, Jimmy Dore, Kyle Kulinski, Glenn Greenwald, all of this shit, I mean, they just it just went out, explode and everything. I do think that maybe Tucker Carlson, in my opinion, probably kind of peeped in there, and he looked at it as a circular firing squad, and I don't think that he minds using them and everything. But I don't give a damn if Tucker Carlson has Jimmy Dore on the show. I am tired of people acting like he is sheep herding people into the Republican Party. Now, I have a lot of friends who are on the left who hates Jimmy Dore. They think I'm like the biggest Jimmy Dore fan. I like Jimmy Dore, but I'm not like the biggest Jimmy Dore fan. I like him enough that I saw him live back in January. I do like him better than I do the Young Turks. That's for sure. But the point I'm trying to make is that that they have gone out of their way to vilify him and act like he's sheep herding people into the Republican Party. And if that is what he's trying to do, it's really failed. He's miserably failed at his job because even though I am as pissed as I can be with the Democrats now more than I've ever been, doesn't mean that I am ready to go lockstep vote for the Republicans. I still think the Republican Party's worse than the Democrats. I want to repeat that. I still think that the Republican Party is worse than the Democrats. On policy, they're worse. Just on the social issues alone makes the Republican Party worse. On the economics, they're pretty much the damn same. They're both got the same corporate donors. Republicans, the difference between Republicans and the Democrats is this right now in the year 2022. Democrats don't do shit for working people. They don't do shit for you. That's the best you can get out of the Democrats. Republicans, they will actively work against the interests of working people. That's the difference. That's pretty much the difference between Democrats and Republicans. But I do not believe that Jimmy Dore is this crypto right-wing person trying to go and sheep herd people into the Republican Party. And they're like, oh, I never hear Jimmy Dore talk mean about the Republicans. He only attacks the Democrats. I'm going to answer that. Attacking the Republicans is the easiest thing to do. It's low-hanging fruit. I've had this program, my program, the Willy Bragg Show, since February 2020. And if you will go and look back at my videos, there's plenty of videos where I criticize the Republicans, but there's plenty of videos where I criticize the Democrats. And that's how I go about it. He decided that he wanted to go and focus on attacking the Democrats because, hey, you got a lot of bread tube that goes after the Republicans, and you need to know what's going on. And a lot of shit that's going wrong with the Democrats, he's correct on. So, so there is that caveat to it. And another thing, he does criticize Republicans on his show. I have not heard him talking about embracing George W. Bush and Dick Cheney and saying Liz Cheney is a wonderful person now. I've not heard him done that. I have not heard him. There's no indicator that he was ready to go and vote for Donald Trump in 2016 or in 2020. I know that he voted for Jill Stein in 2016, and I know that he voted for Howie Hawkins in 2020. I know that he lives in California, and I know that I think he's on record of voting for the Socialist Equality Party in some election in the past. He's an anti-capitalist. He is. He's a lot of people who claim he's right-wing within the progressive community are actually to his right. Some of them are to his left, but many of them are to his right. So I just want to have that clarified right there. And with that battle between Kyle and Young Turks and Jimmy Dore, I mean, yeah, I'm probably more on Kyle's side, although I do wish Kyle would go more into independent politics. And I do think that day will come. And I do think that there will be a time where Jimmy and Kyle will reconcile. I do think that day will come. Because I think they do work. They work well together. So let's talk about the next person here. Somebody that's very controversial, shall we say. And that'll be hold tight, hold tight, hold tight, hold tight. There she is. Okay. And that'll be, of course, Tulsi Gabbard. As you can see in this picture here, there she is with Bernie Sanders. And she became well known because of Bernie Sanders. In 2016, she basically blew the lid on the Democratic National Committee. We know the story. I'm not going to go into detail because that goes too much into conspiracy theories about elections. And when I talk about elections, like anything dealing with presidential elections, I'm in danger of getting yanked off of YouTube like I did last week. So y'all know where I stand on this, where it's considered conspiracy theory. So I'm not going to go into detail. I have my ass covered. So let's just say that's how she became known nationally in 2016. And she, so people called her right wing because she grew up, she was born into a socially conservative Hindu family in American Samoa. She grew up in Hawaii. And even though her parents were Democrats, they were kind of old-fashioned even in the 1990s and early 2000s on question of LGBTQ. Not that many liberals were all that great, because I even knew liberals who were not quite ready for same-sex marriage yet, but they were kind of cool with like a rough equality thing, which was more progressive than the Republicans, but still not far enough. But she was still kind of horrible on the issue. I do believe that she evolved on the issue by the time 2012 came along. But you know what? So did Obama. So did Joe Biden. So did Hillary Clinton. So did a lot of the Democrats. So so people who want to sit there and talk about her backwards positions. Remember, there was a lot of Democrats who had backwards positions, not just her. But Hillary Clinton was sore about the year 2016, and she went into conspiracy theories about Tulsi Gabbard, and she went into this whole thing about Russia. And I'm going to choose my words carefully. 2019, she talked about Russia and Tulsi Gabbard. She didn't mention Tulsi Gabbard by name, but we knew who she was talking about. And for some reason, corporate Democrats hated her, but so did pretty much half of the actual left. And you got the other half of the actual left that still kind of liked her. But I was hoping for a Bernie Sanders Tulsi Gabbard ticket. I kind of wish she didn't run in 2020. I kind of wish she would have been a campaign surrogate. She would have been safer. I think her political future would have been in better hands. She would have still been a member of Congress. And I kind of believe that maybe she would have probably convinced, I think she would have probably been a member of the squad. I think she would have probably tried to convince the squad to go with force the vote. But that's just my opinion. But I could be correct. Anyway, I don't want to, as I said, I'm going to talk about the primary too much, except there was the media blackout, and the debates, her being in every other debate and the guidelines and all that. I was disappointed when she ended up dropping out and endorsing Biden, and and the way she was treated at the convention was horrible. And then when she exited out of Congress, I was bothered by her working on anti-trans legislation with a Republican on women's sports and everything. That bothered me. And after she left Congress, she's been ideologically mixed and all over the place. So maybe in some areas she's shifted further right, and I don't like that about her. But she's been very consistent and correct on foreign policy. And on foreign policy is where it counts. And you're talking about human civilization. We're talking about nuclear war. We're talking about a situation between Russia and Ukraine and NATO and all of this and the bioweapons lab, things like that, where Mitt Romney basically wanted her, basically hinting that he wanted her arrested for treason. And we know that the U.S. government is keeping an eye on her. She's no longer a major in the U.S. Army. She's now a colonel. But they're keeping an eye on her. And but anyhow, so many so she's been unfairly attacked so much, and it bothers me to the level that she's been attacked. I don't agree with her on everything now these days. In the words of Jackson Hinkle, he said it himself. Some areas she's less based than she used to be. That's how he worded it, and I would go along with that phrase too. But in some areas, she still is good, and I just kind of want to have that stated. So, especially in foreign policy. So anyway, let's go to the next person. Can we? Okay, and that next person is also somebody I guess is almost as controversial as Tulsi Gabbard, but never been elected, and that would be, of course, and the world's upside down these days because the world's just upside down with some of these people on the left are now considered right wing. So, what can you say? And that's Glenn Greenwald, and Glenn Greenwald basically started in the year 2005 with his harsh critique of the Bush-Cheney doctrine with regard to national security, civil liberties issues regarding First Amendment. We know about him when he worked for The Guardian and the situation with Ed Snowden and Chelsea Manning. We know about his work and his relationship and his advocacy for Julian Assange. We know these things about him, and we know that he's never changed. We know that he's never been far, far, far left. We know this. What we know about Glenn Greenwald was that Glenn Greenwald was more or less pretty much a liberal, like center left, progressive liberal Democrat, not like a far, far lefty like many of us are, but just a liberal that happens to be a civil libertarian, kind of like your ACLU, First Amendment kind of advocate. And I mean, I know I've been in the ACLU before myself, not a lawyer, but I've always supported the ACLU. Not so much these days. They've gotten a little sketchy. They still do good work, but I got some issues with them now. But the ACLU is kind of they run hot and cold sometimes. But so now everybody's calling Glenn Greenwald right wing because he goes on Tucker Carlson with Fox News. He's no longer allowed to go on MSNBC or some of the other so-called liberal networks. And so he's called right wing because he goes on Tucker Carlson. He's not going up there to say, we need more tax cuts for the rich, or we need to put a stop to the so-called radical homosexual agenda, considering that Glenn Greenwald's gay. And they're calling him right wing now. We're talking about a Jewish gay man married. This gentleman in this photo is David Miranda. He's married to a Trotskyist who's a member of the Brazilian parliament. He's a member of the Brazilian parliament in the Socialism and Liberty Party, a Trotskyist organization, a split from the Lula da Silva Party, Workers' Party. We're talking about a man that actually helped Lula be freed from prison. When Lula is likely to be back elected to defeat Jair Bolsonaro. And it's something that we will be all welcoming. If you're a leftist, you're fiber and you're familiar with current affairs around the world, we all know that Jair Bolsonaro is a piece of shit. Jair Bolsonaro is an asshole. And that, he's people say he's Brazil's Donald Trump. I say, no, he's more like Brazil's Ron DeSantis. It's like Ron DeSantis meets Pinochet is what he's more like. He's more intelligent than Donald Trump. So the Donald Trump thing, Donald Trump, But anyhow, he's a piece of shit is what Jair Bolsonaro. is, and he considered Glenn Greenwald and David Miranda as troublemakers. They have to have 24 hours, 7 days a week security at their home because they're in fear of their lives. Glenn Greenwald lives in Rio de Janeiro in Brazil. He's not right-wing, people. He's not right-wing. He's not changed. Maybe a lot of the shitlibs have changed because they're embracing people that were embraced by Rush Limbaugh 15 years ago. You see, that's the problem with the shitlibs. The shitlibs are embracing people who were pals with Rush Limbaugh 15 years ago, while people like Glenn Greenwald were critical of people who were the praise of Rush Limbaugh 15 years ago, who still are critical of people who were praised by Rush Limbaugh 15 years ago. And for some reason, the common sense of the shitlibs is missing. We're talking about a man that was attacked by a right-wing radio talk show host in Rio, who was probably Brazil's Rush Limbaugh. So, it's literally physically attacked. So I think it's ridiculous when I hear people say, well, Glenn Greenwald's right-wing, So, anyway. Well, there's another one. We're almost done, folks. We're almost done. So, this is another one I'm going to talk about. And that's her name in real life is June Lapine. But you know her on YouTube as Shoe on Head. And she's been, she's a kind of a popular YouTube streamer. She doesn't stream as much as I like to see her stream, but she posts fairly often on Twitter. And she got popular in around 2014, 2015, around that time period during the anti-SJW thing when the skeptic movement kind of split and so you had this anti-SJW movement and, where kind of went goofy, and some people went and this anti-SJW movement went in such a direction where it produced people like a Dave Rubin out there. It produced your people like a Tim Pool type out there. And these people ended up being as bad as the SJWs that they were criticizing because they ended up agreeing with the right wing. They ended up agreeing with Ben Shapiro. They ended up agreeing with Dinesh D'Souza. And they ended up agreeing with Steven Crowder. And they're basically the right-wing version of the really, really obnoxious purple hair kids on the college campuses. But the difference is that the purple hair kids on the college campuses mean well. The Dinesh D'Souzas and the Steven Crowders and the Ben Shapiros do not mean well. That's the difference. Well, they went after Shoe on Head, claiming, well, she was friends with Lauren Southern, whatever, and Lauren Southern's got a lot of horrible views, and all that. I don't understand why she associated with Lauren Southern, and I whatever. But I never met Shoe on Head. She doesn't know I exist, more than likely. But I don't believe she's right wing herself. I think when you're in a line of work, streaming, and you talk to people and in circles, you end up striking a conversation and a rapport with certain people, and for some reason you might find some things you can relate on or whatever. I wouldn't say that Lauren Southern is necessarily Richard Spencer or anything like that, but she's pretty awful. She's like a slightly worse Lauren Chen as far as the politics is concerned. But that does not make Shoe on Head some terrible person because of it. But they try to go and find an excuse to call her right wing because because she made she'll make some what she thinks are anti-feminist statements. Now, she's young, and this is not an insult on her. She's a millennial. And I think that she's seen the third wave feminist movement, some of the more, probably some of the more obnoxious aspects of it, the ones where they're basically Hillary Clinton simps, the corporate Democrat, you know, the ones that wants to be the corporate executive types that, you know, they're okay on some social issues, but they're not particularly progressive otherwise. But everybody's like, well, they had this sort of yes queen kind of attitude toward women, raw, where women hear me roar sort of thing. And I'm not sitting there maligning feminism, but I think that the She One Head comes from an earlier school of feminism where it was all about the equality and it was all about egalitarianism. And it was not all about, you know, man hating and man bashing and all of that. And I think that's where that's the point of view she comes from. It's basically a feminism that rejects political correctness and it's more egalitarian. And you know, and she's I mean, she's good at what she does with her videos and all that. She's done well for herself. She knows what she's doing. She's a smart gal, and she's going places. And the thing about it is that I still think that if you're not from a certain time period, you're not going to quite see things quite the same way. I'm 53 years old as a leftist. You know, I probably don't see things the same way that somebody that was a leftist from the 60s would see things. I'm seeing it from another perspective, from a today perspective, for example. It's something along those lines. But she was a Bernie Sanders supporter in 2016 and in 2020. And she's been always progressive across the board. She's not taken any really horrible right-wing positions that I'm aware of. And she's always been a free speech advocate. And I'm noticing a link of all these people that gets criticism. All of them have been free speech absolutists, by the way. And that's also another thing I'm noticing. So anyway, She One Head has been getting a lot of crap too. And I wish that they would leave her alone in that regard. So I will mention one more, and that one more person would be, of course, let me get that person up here. And I already referenced that person earlier in this commentary, but he's the topic at the moment. He was recently on the Vanguard, and that was, of course, Aaron Maté. And Aaron Maté, who works with the Gray Zone, he currently, and he writes on foreign policy a lot, and kind of putting arrested this myth about Syria, the demonization of Syria by the Western media, predominantly the neocons, and where even some shitlibs are taking a let's go and bomb Syria or take an Assad position. Not that Assad is an angel, but honestly, if John Bolton was talking about supporting Al-Qaeda, shouldn't that put everybody to a pause? But no, it seems like a lot of shitlibs rather listen to someone like a John Bolton on Syria than to listen to someone like Aaron Maté. And I think that Aaron Maté's onto something because, with regard to Syria, and I honestly do not believe about these chemical attacks either. I have my doubts too. So I agree with Aaron Maté about these chemical attacks because Assad, who is a dictator, he's a secular dictator. And there is something about secular dictatorships in the Middle East. If you're a secular dictator in the Middle East, even though you are, in my opinion, a dictator, you're going to have a slightly more Western-centric outlook than you would be if you were a fundamentalist. That's my take. That's not anybody else's take. That's just my take on things. And so we're talking about a government that protects its Christian minorities. And some of the neocons that want to go and bomb the shit out of Syria, the ones that love to go and frolic around with the evangelicals, the ones that talk about persecution against Christians. Well, let me tell you, Russia, Iran, and Syria took care of the ISIS problem. They took care of that ISIS problem a couple of years ago. And ISIS were the ones that were the ones persecuting the Christians. Syria doesn't persecute Christians. As bad as Saddam Hussein was when he was in power, he didn't persecute Christians either, because he was a secular dictator. See where I'm going with this? So, but the Bush administration, the Bush-Cheney policy ended up fueling more fundamentalism than it did to try to put a stop to it. The best way to put a stop to it is non-interventionism, is goodwill. And the way to enable fundamentalism in that part of the world is the Bush-Cheney doctrine, bombings, and Obama, Trump, and Biden continue it with the drone strikes. It enables that shit. So, but because Aaron Matei took that line, everybody wants to call him right wing, and just like Briahna Joy Gray, he's that someone like Marjorie Taylor Greene on a different issue. He kind of commended her over the $40 billion voting against the $40 billion aid to Ukraine. And let me tell you, don't get it twisted. Nobody hates Marjorie Taylor Greene more than I do. I do hate Marjorie Taylor Greene with a passion. And I'm pretty sure he's not a fan of Marjorie Taylor Greene either. But was it wrong for Marjorie Taylor Greene to vote against aid to the Ukraine? She was less wrong than the squad in that regard. And the squad would be correct on pretty much everything else. I still don't want Marjorie Taylor Greene in Congress. I hate her guts. I hate her very existence. Make that clear. I mean, the bitch came out with legislation trying to basically ban transgender people from existing. So if anybody thinks that agreeing with her as a stop clock, giving the right time twice a day, is somehow being in league with Marjorie Taylor Greene, that's absolutely stupid. The most awful people in the world can be capable of being correct on something occasionally. Doesn't mean that they're wonderful. Sometimes bad people by accident come to a correct conclusion about something. But what it's all about is taking that and twisting it around to go and attack somebody and being selective about it. Because, remember when Cenk Uygur and Anna Kasparian were attacking Aaron Matei last summer, remember, Cenk Uygur used to be a Republican. And Cenk Uygur, as a Republican in the 1990s, as a young kid, as a young adult, was not the worst kind of Republican. He was a moderate Republican, secular. I mean, I said it before. I mean, he was kind of like a libertarian-leaning Republican who was like pro-business and fiscally conservative, but socially liberal, who apparently had trouble dating women when he was in college. I can understand that, actually. I can understand that for real. And he was kind of mad about it, wrote a blog about how, and was angry with women. And, he wrote some negative things about women on the blog. And it was just something he felt at the time. And he evolved, but they held that against them. But nobody's willing to, for some reason, that's okay. That's okay. But, you see what I'm getting with this. Basically, people are being selective, is what I'm saying. And so my point is that he's being targeted as another right-winger too. And all of this is fucked up. And some of the progressives, some of the progressives that likes to do this, where the fuck do they really profoundly disagree with someone like Briahna Joy Gray or Jimmy Dore or Tulsi Gabbard or Glenn Greenwald or Shoe on Head or Aaron Matei or Russell Brands or someone like that? I'm trying to think of somebody else, Matt Taibbi, or who's another one? Katie Halper. I mean, Nomiki Kuntz was hinting that Crystal Ball was right wing because she dared criticize AOC over the situation about Amazon with regard to Chris Smalls from the ALU. And Crystal Ball was correct. And AOC got the message. She got the message. She got guilt tripped by the left because the left has been getting pissed off with AOC lately. And she's been making some kind of an effort to try to win back the good graces. She's not doing as much as I like for her to do, but she's making a little bit of an effort, I guess. And I'm not perfect. I'm not ideologically perfect. I'm not a purist. But some of these shit libs, they need to lay off and they need to realize when you criticize a Bernie Sanders or you criticize an AOC, you need to be honest in doing that, because we put them in there to help us get what we need. And and they're going to give us more to saying what the hell's the use of us putting them in there. And that's really what it comes down to, honestly. So anyway, over here on the chat line, let's go on over here to the top. On the chat line, we have PHX, Cisco. Both of these parties are 100% the people's enemy. It really seems like that. Honestly, honest to God, it seems like that. Let's see. I hope I'm pronouncing this name correctly. King Quos. I'm so sorry if I'm pronouncing it incorrectly. Forgive me. It's because they spent all their time and energy punching left for the last few years. I love the way you phrase that. Yeah, and giving Republicans like Tucker Carlson way too much credit. Oh my God, I wish I would have spotted that earlier. I would have said, "Can I steal your line?" Let's see here. He attacks AOC less than Tulsi Gabbard, even though Tulsi Gabbard abandoned Medicare for all first and also did not force the vote. But Gabbard came on his show, so she gets a pass. Well, that's kind of true about, I think you're referring to Jimmy Dore. Wait a minute. He attacks AOC less than Tulsi Gabbard, even though Tulsi Gabbard abandoned Medicare for all. Let's see. I'm trying to think, and also did not force the vote. I'm trying to think of what do you mean by that? I'm sorry. I do think that Tulsi Gabbard would have actually, if she would have remained in Congress and she would have been a surrogate for Bernie instead of running in 2020, I think she would have probably tried to force the vote. Now, as you're referring to Jimmy Dore, I think that's one of the reasons Jimmy Dore was like a big proponent of Tulsi Gabbard running, is because Bernie wouldn't come on the show. I do think that he's kind of butthurt over that, and I think he would have probably otherwise been willing to go on the show. So who knows? So anyway, And this is from Twitch here. I don't know if the YouTube people can see it here, but it says from Misinformation Police. Interesting name. Let's keep the misinformation to a minimum today, Willie. That's interesting. Okay. All right. We will try to keep that misinformation to a minimum today. I will try. I promise. So anyway, if you like what you heard, please, my goodness, please press like and comment. And if you disagree, comment anyway. We will have a conversation. Feel free to share the content on this channel and any other content I may have. As a First Amendment absolutist, it's my duty to inform you to create your own platform and utilize it, because we are, in fact, the muckrakers of our time. And remember to hit that subscribe button. Follow me on Twitter. Follow me on Twitter. Follow me on Twitch. Follow me on YouTube. Follow me on Rumble, although I don't really do much on Rumble yet. And remember to always reject corporate media, because they have nothing at all to offer us. Not a damn thing. And until next time, we will chat again. And I will conclude by saying to you all, music. Music.